air pollution is not a Delhi problem. It's the problem of the entire country. Unfortunately, a lot of our attention is around these episodic events. But then there are also a continuous source of emission that happens all around the year. And unfortunately, we don't talk that much about it. What we have to broadly as a principle understand, in cities, we have to reduce combustion, which is burning. If I have a bad air quality in my city, whom should I hold responsible? That right now is very unclear. Historically, these mandates have come through courts. So whether the CNG transition in Delhi was also a transition driven by courts. So when you have countries which are leaders in automobile production saying no to automobiles after a certain level, the writing is very clear.
Are we on? Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the OoruLabs podcast from Bengaluru. Ever complained how bad our cities are, how bad your commute is? You'll get to hear from people who are working to solve these problems in their own way. This is your weekly soapbox for urban sustainability. I'm your host Sathya Sankaran. Amit Bhatt is the managing director in India for the International Council on Clean Transportation. I have known him during his 12-year stint at WRI prior to this, where he was the executive director for integrated transport. Based in Delhi, he is experiencing firsthand the pollution the city is currently facing. Every winter, the air quality index breaks the three-digit barrier. It goes above 999 sometimes, and it even breaks the measurement devices, for example, right? And international attention is on Delhi year after year. No amount of hand wringing seems to help. There is no doubt that the air will get clean someday in Delhi and everywhere else, but not by carrying on with business as usual. Something needs to give. So Amit is here to tell us where the problem is and what can be done, because there are multiple facets to this problem. Welcome to the show, Amit.
Thanks a lot, Satya, and nice to meet you, at least virtually. But it's always a pleasure talking to you and discussing some of these challenges that we face on a daily basis. So, yeah, pleasure to be here.
So let's jump in with this climax first. How long before Delhi can breathe clean air? What's your estimate?
So, I think the air pollution problem is a technical problem, no doubt, but it's also a political problem. Because we have seen from world over that you can clean the air in your region, but it requires two approach. One is the technical solution, what is it that we can do? But more than that, the political will. And we have seen that regions across the world that have been able to solve the air pollution problem have been able to do it because there is a political will. So Delhi is a peculiar case because you have a state government, you have a central government, and then you also have the states surrounding it. And so if you have to clean the air of Delhi, you have to clean the air which is in and around Delhi, which is the airshed of Delhi. Now, the airshed of Delhi extends way beyond even the geographic boundary of the country. What it means is that the air that we get in Delhi can also be polluted in upstream. So right now, if you look at the whole farm fire conversation which is going around in Delhi, where paddy crops are being burned in Punjab, Haryana, and other places. Now that air comes to Delhi. Now that cleaning cannot be done by Delhi government or agencies which are in the jurisdiction of Delhi. Some of this air also comes from the neighboring country of Pakistan. If we have to solve the air pollution problem in Delhi, we have to solve the problem of the entire Delhi airshed. And the question is, who will do it? Now, absolutely, the state governments which are involved have to take their action. But we also have to include national government as well, the central government, because they are the ones who can coordinate what happens in other states. So that's one. Second, this air also goes downstream, which means it also goes to Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, parts of Madhya Pradesh, as well as Orissa, Jharkhand, and all this. So it's an entire Indo-Gangetic plain problem. So that's the severity of the problem. Now, what we have seen is countries or regions like California, which had the same set of problem like we are experiencing in Delhi. One, they were able to clean that problem. So it's a doable problem, but they followed this regional approach where actions were taken at all the geographies, a very strict monitoring and enforcement, and then we saw the result. So to cut the long story short, it will take time because we have to get agencies involved together on the common flame. Then we also have to take scientific actions because a lot of times it's a very unscientific approach in solution. And then we have to understand one important thing. And this is what I really want to tell all the viewers. Air pollution is not a Delhi problem. It's the problem of the entire country. It is much more severe in the northern part, the Indo-Gangetic plain. Believe me, air is equally bad in other cities as well. Now, what happens, especially in some cities where either because they are close to sea, you get this land and sea breeze, air gets cleaned, or city like Bangalore where you get some rain frequently, the air gets cleaned. So, but again, it's a problem which is there across the country. It is much more severe in the Indo-Gangetic plain. It goes from bad to worse in winters. You might be following this story in Delhi where people are saying, look, air pollution is bad. What are we doing? So it's at a severe level. But come summer, where there will be no conversation, unfortunately, on air pollution, but the air will not be good. It will be bad. So we go from bad to very bad to worse and then to severe. But we don't have too many good air days. And that's what we should try to address as we look at the solutions of air problem in not only Delhi, but the entire country as a whole.
So that brings an interesting question, right? So you said it is a regional issue. Most people would think that this Delhi is like this symbolic thing where you can see it, all the powerful people are there, many people visit Delhi and come out, and so they kind of focus on Delhi as a proxy for the entire region. Nobody talks about the bad air in the rest of the regions. If you look, like you said, right now most of the Indo-Gangetic plain is bad. But it also is interesting is that the south is showing cleaner numbers. Does this really mean the air quality is better in the south? Because as far as I can tell, it seems to be the same everywhere, just that the numbers are not showing. Maybe the wind blew, the rain came down and washed it off. Are we just washing these things off and blowing it away somewhere else and thinking that the rest of the country is clean? How severe is the air pollution problem throughout the country?
Yeah, and that's really an important question because one is that we get a lot of attention in Delhi because as you said, there's a lot of media, there's a lot of powerful people, and so it's a conversation that takes a lot of media space, and rightfully so. But even in Delhi, if you look at the surrounding towns of Delhi, there is hardly any coverage, and which creates this perception that air pollution is a Delhi problem, which is not. So that's one. It's the problem is at a national level. Now, some of the cities, either like for example Mumbai, now air quality is not that good in Mumbai, but because there's a land and sea breeze phenomena, and the rain and the sea breezes washes away a lot of these pollutants, the problem is not that severe. But there are many days where the air in Mumbai is equally, if not worse than Delhi. So that we have to understand. Secondly, we also have to understand that Delhi gets a lot of data. So there's an extensive data collection that happens in Delhi, which also gives us this notion that, oh, look at this data, it is so bad. So one is that we have relatively good quality of air quality data in Delhi, and a lot of it is public, so people do take a look at the data. But in many cities, there is virtually no data. We can't say that because there is no data, the air quality is good. So that is what we have to understand. And third is very important is that because of some episodic events that happen in and around Delhi, especially the biomass burning which happens in winter, now that takes that air quality from worse to severe category, and that's where all the attention starts. That the farm fires or even the crackers that we see which are burnt. So that's the other reason. So the point is we have to first understand it's a severe problem. It's a major health hazard. Not any city is kind of escaping from this health hazard. It's just that there is a lot of noise and coverage which happens in Delhi, and that is why we get all this attention that it is so bad.
The causes of this thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of blame game going around. So you blame the Diwali crackers, they will say, no, it is the stubble burning. The stubble burning says, no, it is your transportation. So there is a source apportionment ability to understand that required, but not at city levels, but at a national level that you say. What really are the causes, and what do you think is the major cause? Right. So we know for a fact that most of our cities are congested. There's a lot of air pollution. You and I worked in transport, and we do know that transport is also a leading cause of pollution. But when it comes to winter, it is about saying, no, let's just rain the whole thing and wash it off so that we can go on with business as usual. I still want to drive my car. I still have to burn my stubble, but it's just the weather this is causing the problem. That blame of winter is the problem. If it rained and if I had winds like how it is in the other parts of the country, we won't have this problem. How do we deconstruct that statement, the causes, and where you think attention should be focused? Sector by sector, maybe.
Absolutely. So there are two types of issues that are around air pollution. So, for example, there is something called an episodic event,
Mhm.
which means a certain point in time you will have certain episodes that will cause air pollution to spike. Now, the cracker burning is one episode that happens. The biomass burning is one episode that happens. And there are some episodes like this, right, where you get a certain spike for a certain period of time in a year. Unfortunately, a lot of our attention is around these episodic events. Now, I'm not saying that these are bad or these are good. Absolutely, we have to address these episodic events. But then there are also a continuous source of emission that happens all around the year. And unfortunately, we don't talk that much about it. Now, in that continuous source, at least in Delhi, transport is the largest emitter of air pollutants. Why should we only talk about transport when it becomes when we talk when we come to winters, when we combine with biomass burning and the cracker burning? So transport is one source that is emitting all around the year. Similarly, you have the solid waste burning that happens all around the year. You have industries that happens all around the year. So we have to deconstruct the air pollutant conversation from episodic events and the continuous events. Now, when these episodic events arrive, absolutely we have to deal with it. But we should also plan on dealing this continuous source of emissions. Right? So that's one part of the story. The second part of story is in that continuous source, are we really understanding how much is the contribution? So roughly, let's look at the particulate matter 2.5 emission. Now, within the boundary of Delhi, the maximum emission comes from transport, and it's about 40%. Now, what do you do with that 40% is a big question. Now, let's understand how does a transport vehicle pollutes our cities, right? So, if you have a vehicle, and if you want to understand whether my vehicle is clean or not, there are two ways you can understand. One is that when the type approval happens of that vehicle, you will get certain emission factors, and that will tell you what's the quantum of emission that is expected from this vehicle that you are purchasing. And if you maintain that vehicle fine, you will be within that limit. Second is you get this vehicle and you do undergo this pollution under control certificate or PUC certificate as we call, which you can do it every 6 months or in many cases it's almost on a yearly basis. So let's say if I have a PUC certificate, then I am legally complying from the clean vehicle category. And this is where actually the problem starts. Now, in Delhi, everyone is talking about particulate matter, PM 2.5, PM. You open the newspaper, you will see PM 2.5. In your PUC test, we don't capture particulate matter emission. We don't capture NOx emission because NOx then goes up in the atmosphere and creates particulate matter again. Now, my problem is if the transport is a problem, and if we are not capturing what is the particulate matter emission, then even with the vehicle that has the so-called PUC certificates, how are we saying this vehicle is clean vehicle? So there is something fundamentally wrong in terms of how we are judging which vehicle is clean and which vehicle is not clean. Now, please understand this PUC regime was designed 20, 25 years back, where technology was limited and motorization had just started. And maybe at that time it made sense. Now the vehicles are so sophisticated. And again, many cases you have had in many countries where manufacturers have installed cheat devices to manipulate this emission. So I think that's all coming. So I think we also have to look at how do we change our regulatory environment that looks at better understands what comes out from the vehicle, right? So that's one part. The second part of the problem is, now how does this testing happens? Now this testing happens when you take this vehicle, you put it on a stationary, you move out of the vehicle, the guy will insert a probe on the exhaust pipe, it will measure. It's not a real world scenario because the emission also happens on how you are driving, what is the quality of road, what is the quality of infrastructure, how you are maintaining the vehicle, whether it is loaded, unloaded. So there are a lot of factors which will influence emission. That we are not capturing. So the problem is that we are not capturing the real world emission that is coming out from transport vehicles. And therefore, we are not even understanding the severity of the problem which these vehicles are causing. So the question then becomes, how do we better understand? I think this is what we have to move forward. And many cities and countries around the world are now deploying sophisticated technologies to better understand the emission from transport. And believe me, the real world emission and the lab values differ by not some percentage point, but by an order of magnitude.
Wow.
And in many cases, 7, 8, 10 times is the more emission that happens in the real world than in the lab values. So if that is the case, how do you deal with it is something that we have to think a little bit more. And thirdly, I think then how do you devise strategies where you promote cleaner modes of transport that not only work on public health, but on climate change, but on equity and those kinds of things. I think that is what we have to think a little more. But the problem is we have not understood the real impact of transportation vehicles on public health. And that should be a very important starting point as we move towards fighting air pollution in our cities.
So before I come back and talk about PUC, I totally agree with you because I think today the technology is available. If you can read how many kilometers per liter, all those kind of data that you're having, why not capture that and show it on your dashboard? You're emitting so much, and even if it is, there are many different ways of doing this measurement itself, right? You go for a service every time. Why doesn't he measure and upload the data to the RTO website? At the service center itself, what is your fitness, what is the PUC, all of those kind of things. I think there's a lot of reforms I want to come back to on, but I want to touch upon this recent Supreme Court or was it High Court of Delhi, which said go and clean up something urgently. So they wanted to do cloud seeding and some rain came and washed it away. This, yes, it is an immediate visible approach. But if Delhi government had to do something, or any of these state governments or city governments needed to do something, that's all they could do because they will punt the ball to the central government and say, look, I can't control how the stubble is being burnt in Punjab. So is there anything at the central level that has taken cognizant of this fact? Because I know that the pollution control boards, the CPCB and the KSPCBs of the world have done some clean air action plan and all of those things. But KSPCB in Karnataka's case, I've seen their action plan. They just punted it back into the other departments. BBMP put some water fountains, you do some cloud seeding, There is the CPCB appropriately empowered to actually take punitive action on people? I don't think that exists, right? What do you think is that long-term solution? Who should be empowered to start on this journey?
No, absolutely. And I think if you look at most of the action, it's mostly of reaction. It's like applying a band-aid to an injury. Yes, band-aid is important, but then the injury will not go away just by band-aid. Sometimes you need to do a major surgery. Now, the question is, who will do that surgery? And that's what I was suggesting, that we have seen that the problem of air pollution being addressed only when we have taken a regional approach. If I have to solve the problem of Delhi, studies have shown that in terms of the emission that comes to Delhi, roughly 60% comes from outside Delhi boundary. Now, assuming that if Delhi government takes all the action to solve the Delhi air pollution problem, maybe it can bring down that 40% to zero, but it cannot do anything on that 60%. Similarly, let's say if UP government wants to solve the problem of air pollution in UP, it can do what is within its jurisdiction. It cannot do what is outside its jurisdiction. And that's where I think we have to create either working groups or authorities that cut across jurisdiction. Let's say if we have something like a Delhi Airshed Authority, which has powers to address air quality in the entire Delhi airshed region. It can then actually direct what Haryana should do, what Punjab should do, what Delhi should do, what UP should do. So we have to either the state government or the central government has to come forward and say that, look, this is what we'll be doing. And Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change can take that leadership load, or Ministry of Public Health can take that leadership load. Or we create something, a separate authority like we have National Highways Authority of India, which does highway construction across states. And it has that power to do it. So we have to either empower existing institutions to take this work or create new institutions to take this work. Because believe me, the problem lies in coordinating with multiple states.
Mhm.
Anything that goes across a state jurisdiction boundary, it's very, very difficult to do. So this is where I think the start should happen. We have to first understand that air pollution problem of a city or a state is not restricted to its jurisdiction boundary, its geographic boundary. It goes across that geographical boundary. Who will then take that load in coordinating and making sure that other states also do the same action? And that's where we have to create these agencies and authorities, either by empowering the existing set of people or creating a separate authority which can take the conversation forward.
So the Central Pollution Control Board is just a board. It's almost like a coffee board. Uh, I have seen that even the state pollution control boards, which it was set up by the courts to just monitor, right? So, and they very clearly said, I am only supposed to monitor and tell you what to do. And they have punted the ball to different agencies, and they have regular meetings, and it is chaired well. But I don't think they are interested in solving the problem. Uh, I don't know what is being done in the Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change. So what will they do in COP28, for example, when they go in December? They are taking targets. They are negotiating something at a large level. It is not percolating down because there's a lack of coordination. Each city is wringing its hands, but all the
Yeah.
pollution is being washed into it. At least 60% of it. There is the 40% that I think urgent action needs to be done. 40% is good enough. Now, that at a state level, where do you think it's going? From what I see, Delhi has tried its bit with odd even rules, with trying to get more EVs into the mix to clean the tailpipe emissions. Do you think that is helping? Is that something that can be tried out in the large cities on the transportation side? What else do you think can be done apart from the pollution under certificate reforms in actually measuring it better for the existing vehicles, let alone moving?
What we have to broadly as a principle understand, in cities, we have to reduce combustion, which is burning. Now, that burning can be the burning of fuel, that burning can be that burning of solid waste, it could be industrial burning. So, as a principle, we have to move away from combustion in cities. So, that's the larger principle. And again, cooking is also a major health impact contributor, not only externally, but also internal pollution. So, how do we move away to a society which does not rely on combustion? And that's a larger philosophy. Now, in the transport space, if you look at, and again, I have some Delhi data, two-wheeler and three-wheeler account for almost 42% of particulate matter emission, followed by trucks around 35%. And then we have cars and other things. So the question is, and if transport continues to be a largest source of emission, what is it that we can do? And therefore, we have to create cities that, one, do not depend on motorized mode of transport, which is how do you then promote walking and cycling in cities? And when we talk about any good city, people give example of Paris, Amsterdam, London, but all these cities are very good for walking and cycling. So how do we start from planning cities that don't require transport? Second, cities will have long trip distances. So how do you promote public transport? And this way, I think a lot of work needs to be done, because somehow public transport is now becoming synonymous with metro. Now, metro is a good project. It will serve you on certain routes which are high density, but not the entire city is high density. So how do you get in buses? How do you get in feeder? How do you get in other modes of transport that will come in? So after that, we will still have certain motor vehicles left. We will also have a lot of freight vehicles that will be left. How do you convert them to zero emission? And that's where I think electrification comes in, because one, there's zero tailpipe emission. So you're not actually adding to the combustion in the city. Yes, the power plant is there. It is emitting somewhere. So then how do you shift to more renewable energy is the question. So I think from the transport side, I would really look at how do we encourage more walking, cycling? How do we encourage more public transport? And how do we encourage to zero emission vehicle? I think if we follow this, we can move forward to a scenario where at least the transport emission in cities is brought down minimal, which is currently very high in most of the other cities.
The bus is very interesting in public transport. Right now, the metro has a huge amount of mind space because it's nice, it's fancy, it gives you clean. It's also ties in with the aspirational goals that we have right now. Um, the bus is usually seen as the poor man's mode, and not many governments are interested in putting more buses. But with the new schemes, the PM bus scheme and the one earlier with the ESL run, FAME 2 subsidies and all that, some amount of e-buses are also coming. Do you think the industry is ready to take this transition? Because you have seen some of these people, the two and the three wheelers are moving slightly faster than the heavy commercial vehicles, right? Even the light commercial vehicles are struggling with the electric changeovers. The buses are coming in, but it's not tested for large volumes, and the industry needs to pick up. Do you think we are actually moving fast enough on this transition? Are there still skeptics sitting around and saying, no, until we clean everything from the beginning, it's not going to work? Tailpipe is not important. What do you see as the sense in the transition? You already laid the stage for this transition. Is it happening? And what else needs to be done? Is only Delhi doing it?
It's happening, but one, the pace is slow and it is restricted to a certain geography. One of the things that I often keep getting asked that why we are promoting electric when the power source is predominantly coal. It's a valid question, but for example, we did some analysis so to find that one, if you look at the greenhouse gas emission, even with our current predominantly coal dependent grid, an electric vehicle is cleaner in terms of life cycle emission. Right? So that's one. But I think now we know a pathway, and the pathway is you produce green electricity, which is renewable energy, solar, wind, and other forms. And you use that green energy for transportation, which is the battery electric vehicle. Now, with the internal combustion engine, that pathway is not there. I mean, we have reached levels where we just cannot improve any tangible efficiency improvement in internal combustion engine. So we can't solve the climate change problem with internal combustion engine. So that is very clear. The question is, what is it that we do? So one, definitely, how can we avoid the need for a motorized transport? That's the starting point. So how do you build cities which are more walking, cycling friendly, more public transport friendly, and that's where. And then you shift to electric. The second is, while you may debate whether the electric is clean or not, there is no debate that electric vehicles have zero tailpipe emission. And in the cities that are struggling with emission, you just cannot add more emission to it. So I think that's is something which have to be recognized as very clear. Third is, few years back, the battery prices were very high, and it was not financially viable to bring electric vehicles. With the prices coming down, and projections show that going forward, the prices will come down. So the question is, how are we preparing ourselves for this transition? I think this is also very important that yes, everything will not happen tomorrow, next year or 5 years. Maybe in next 10, 15 years, this transition will happen. And so how we are prepared. And the fourth important point is this phenomena is going to happen all across the world. It is already happening. because cities which are struggling with air quality are saying that, look, we can't add more combustion in cities. So European cities are coming up with target of phasing out internal combustion engine vehicles. And this will also happen. So if the world is transitioning to a zero tailpipe emission future, why should we be left behind? That is a question. And I think that's where we see certain use cases are moving faster. The two-wheeler, three-wheeler is a very great story. The bus story is also picking up. Again, technology is new. It will take some time to mature. So we will have some teething problem, which we saw even with the CNG transition in Delhi. So when CNG buses came in, there are a lot of back and forth which happened, but eventually the technology transition happened. So the same thing will happen with buses as well. But we also have to understand that in a lot of emission happens in the city is through commercial vehicle, heavy duty vehicles or light duty vehicles. How are we going to deal with that will also be very important. And that is something, unfortunately, we are not having too much conversation about. And that needs to happen because it's not only about the car two-wheeler is contributing. You have a lot of trucks that come in and a lot of goods are being brought into cities with larger and smaller trucks. How do we clarify that bit is going to be very, very important in the future.
So that's very interesting, right? So there will be an existing set of older vehicles which are following the older norms of the inefficient way of measuring the tailpipe emissions. We still need standards and reforms to continue to do that for the next 10-15 years in order for us to phase those out and move to newer technologies. And as and when new industries come up with new technologies, I think the energy intensity itself will put a pressure on cleaner. See, unless the products are out there, they'll say, "Oh, who am I doing this for?" Right? That is also there. But that also brings to this question on the we are going to be a 5 trillion, 8 trillion, whatever, right? Superpower of the world with 10 trillion economy and all that. When we are going in that direction, and our economy is producing more and more goods and transportation increases, the energy intensity also increases. Right now, everything is coming fueled by petrol and diesel. So the question is, by trying to get us off of this, are you stifling the growth? We are not ready. They'll give the example of, no, till China became a really developed nation, they never cleaned their air. They were suffering the hazes and everything. All countries have suffered their hazes, and then they went and cleaned it up by pumping more money. The standard excuse is, no, we shouldn't do it now. We should do it only when we are rich enough. But now that we have seen that even if you are not rich, you're going to be affected by this anyway. How do we square these two arguments? Is that energy will go up 4x, but we are supposed to be lower than where we are today. And should you solve the economy problem first, or should we solve this later? So this first second sequentialization starts coming up. How do you view this particular argument?
No, I think it's an important document that is there. And just, I mean, can you count your money by holding your breath? You can't. So the question is, you can't have economic development and prosperity unless you have at least a basic essence of life in your place. Please understand. So we're already seeing this. As we move in this economic development change, we are going to attract, we need human resource to help us, right? And if we are going to compete with the powers of the world, we will be looking at global human resources. I am already seeing that, and I have a small organization. And when we ask people to come and work, one question that I often gets, but can we work outside Delhi? Because we know what happens in winters in Delhi. So already we are seeing people are refusing to come to places which don't have good air quality or places which have very bad air quality. Now, how will we compete with the rest of the world when the human resource is not ready to come to the place because the air quality is poor? Yes, certain set of people will come because they don't have choice, but people who have a choice will also look at these issues. So I think that's very important. Second is, should we also follow the mistakes of the West and then the same trajectory to clean? We need not. And one example is we actually leapfrogged the entire landline journey and we came directly to mobile. So why should we wait for next 20, 30 years and take a learning from how London or some of the other places solve the problem? So I think right now, one good thing for us is that we know the pathway, which was not clear earlier. So the pathway is very clear in most cases on how to solve the problem. The second is the question of economic burden that might come. I think we are looking at that there is definitely a value in economies of scale. So, for example, and I've been talking to a lot of OEMs and saying, can we, for example, create electric trucks in India? And they are saying, yes, we can create electric trucks. We have the tech, but where is the demand? And when I speak to people who are on the demand side, they're saying, yes, but then where is the supply? So now we are in this and supply demand vicious cycle. That unless there is a demand, I cannot supply, and unless I can supply at scale, I cannot bring the cost. And people in the science saying that unless they can get a slightly competitive prices, so they can. So I think there is this vicious cycle which is happening, and this is where I think the government should come in and intervene and break this vicious cycle. So, for example, let's say if tomorrow Delhi decides all my municipal fleet of commercial vehicles will be electric, all my water tanker trucks, or my horticulture trucks, or my C&D disposal trucks, or my so all kinds of trucks would be electric. That will send a signal to the market saying that look, in next couple of years we expect this much demand to come in. The OEMs will start producing vehicles. The prices will come down, and this is exactly what happened in the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and the car space as well. So I think this is where the governments can come in with signal, which is a strong intent that this is the future, and we will see this signal, the industry reacting to it. So I was in Delhi when the CNG transition happened, and believe me, till the day before the order came out that we will transition to CNG, we did not have a single manufacturer with a vehicle that runs on CNG. We did not have a single shop where you can go and buy a CNG vehicle, buses and autos. And people were asking where this vehicle will come from. 6 months down the line, the vehicles were there, the manufacturers were there, and everything fell into place. This is the power of this market, the signal that government can give. So if government gives this signal, believe me, OEMs will come in line and we will have much more competitive prices as of now. Because definitely there is a reluctance to change. People like to maintain status quo, but we know what is the cost we are paying with the status quo.
But it's almost like this. This is almost like a not. I wouldn't call it a lifestyle disease. It's like, okay, pollution is a long term. I don't see it hurting me, so I can switch later. There would be a large scale revolt against a diktat of some such kind. But people who are there and facing the music know that you can't get away from this by washing it with rain. You have to have some kind of diktats. So what has happened so far? So let's look at the government part of it and what they need to do. Uh, right now there are incentive schemes, right? Typically it's better than a coercive measure like a diktat. You say, okay, there is PLI scheme for you to manufacture. There are some states have offered GST credits or tax credits for purchasing electric vehicles. Some others are doing this. They are also doing this procurement scheme through the national bus mission and things like that. So these are there, but yet it's the supply and demand market economics that works out, and it has worked well for two and three wheelers. Like you see, quite a few people are buying it because there is a cost improvement. But on from the government side, is the signaling adequate? Is this okay enough to continue? Or like you say, there is a uh, this whole PM e-bus Seva is a scheme, but I'm saying Swachh Bharat was a mission, the target, and there wasn't any diktats, but it was driven down. And the states don't like it because transportation is a concurrent list, and these guys will start saying, "Why am I being pressured into doing something like this? My air is cleaner in Bengaluru, so let Delhi deal with it. I know until I hit alarming levels, it is not going to affect me." How do you think an effective coordination can be set up? We've already said the pollution control board isn't taking too much of responsibility other than measuring. Where do you think the MOEF and CC can move next? What should the central government do? What should the state governments do? And what can the city governments do? Half the cities don't have good governance, but let's stick to state and center at least.
Absolutely. That's a good question. Our electrification journey is largely revolving around financial support. And it's a good starting point because when you're bringing in some new technology, people are skeptical whether it will work or not. The cost is high. So you give financial support to bring down the cost and also demonstrate the technology, and which is very good. This alone cannot solve for the entire transition because one, we don't have enough money to convert all the vehicles to electric. So it's a good starting point, but in the long run, we need few more things. So what is it that we can do? So one of the things that has worked very well, again, it's a different and difficult sell, is this issue of mandates. So it started with California and they said, look, the prices are high. How do we bring down the price? And they said, we will give certain quota to all the OEMs to sell zero emission vehicle. I mean, you can have any technology. You can achieve zero emission with internal combustion engine. You can do it as well. So they said, we will give a quota. First few years, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, and so on. So what it does is that, let's say if I'm an OEM and I have to sell 5% of my vehicles as electric, the cost is, let's say, high. Let's say cost is double. But since I have to sell, I will bring down the cost. And I will compensate it by marginally increasing the cost of other vehicles. And therefore, it works out very well that you reduce the cost of zero emission vehicles so that you are able to sell, and you marginally increase the cost of other vehicles so you are able to compensate. And that is one scheme that does not require any money from the government. So that's one. Secondly, what governments have also said that they have signaled to the industry the larger transition which is going to happen. So when Europe said we will not register any internal combustion engine cars by 2035, it was a signal to the industry that if you have to sell, you have to change your product mix. Again, no money involved, but a larger level signal which was there. And in third, for example, in London and all, they said we will create ultra low emission zone,
Emission zones.
saying that if you are polluting, you can't come in. Only certain technologies will be allowed. And again, it gives a signal to the market. So I think what we have to do is in this coming years is move beyond financial incentives and create these signals either through mandates or through targets or creating cities which don't allow polluting vehicles to come in. Once you bring in these policies in place, believe me, industry is smart enough to create vehicle, very smart enough to market these vehicles, and super smart enough to sell these vehicles.
All of us have been working on trying to reduce the intensity of motor vehicles, whether it is two wheelers or four wheelers or anything. While we are trying to solve the vehicle problem, we are also trying to wean people away out of their personal vehicles and into the alternate modes like public transport, walking, cycling, and other things. The this As long as we continue to take the guilt away and say, you are driving a cleaner car, you're driving a cleaner motor vehicle, you can continue to congest the roads, you are having this livability issue again. There is time wasted on the roads. There is right now it is fuel wasted, next it will be guilt free congestion on the roads, but you're still having an economic issue. So at some level, the mandates for that is not there. Even the political class is looking at public transport as something that's only for the poor people and not many people are going to use it, unless for them public transport is a metro. That's the only thing they're interested in investing in. uh, where do you see the role of mandates in that? There are lots of tools and techniques, right? Technically you have congestion pricing, road pricing, you have parking charges. None of this is being done anywhere. Being in Delhi and looking at all of these things, many schemes, many programs, many missions, do you think the role for the mandate is arrived? ULEZs, low emission zones, and things like that need to be mandated. Do you see any movement towards that with this TOD and all that? Even that seems to be quite lax. Where do you see that moving? Can we shift people out into more efficient public transport, walking, cycling things? How long of a journey will that be?
One is that there is no option but to shift to that premise. But the big question is, will we do it soon enough? And that to me is a question mark. Because somehow we have been slightly reluctant when it comes to any kind of mandate. Historically, these mandates have come through courts. So whether the CNG transition in Delhi was also a transition driven by courts. So that's one. But again, if you look at globally, cities are moving towards, and even China, which produces so many cars, most cities have a restriction that you can't add beyond a certain number of cars in cities. So when you have countries which are leaders in automobile production saying no to automobiles after a certain level, the writing is very clear. The question is who will drive this transition? And so we did some work to understand who has a regulatory power to drive, let's say, a low emission zone mandate in cities. And we realized that the powers are there at central level, the powers are there at state level, and there are enough powers at local level also to drive this. And we looked at a couple of states. So we realized that MOEFCC, MORTH, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs have these powers to drive the conversation. Even at state level, CPCBs, SPCBs, and state government, the State Pollution Control Board, the state ministries of environment, forest, and local level, urban local bodies also have power. So I think there is enough regulatory power to drive it. The question is about the will. And that is something which is not very clearly coming out. Because then if you have these kinds of restrictive measures, certain people will be impacted positively. If a large society will be impacted positively, but there will be certain people who will be impacted negatively. And how do you deal with it is a problem. So, for example, parking is the lowest hanging fruit. Can we charge people the real parking price of parking? People somehow think it's a birthright to park free anywhere and everywhere they feel like. And we have not been able to resolve that. So I think we'll have to start with some of these low-hanging fruits and then move up the chain. Because to me, eventually we will have to do. The sooner we do it, the better it will be for everyone.
So by the time I release this, it will be mid-December and COP28 would be over. Everybody would have gone and come back. Do you have any hope that something will change on the ground to drive this faster? Yes, commitment is there at a national level. You have NDCs that are being committed. But driving it through the ground into the state and with different levels and varying levels of capacities to do things, varying levels of intent to do things, different parties in different governments trying to say, why, who is he to tell me, kind of things, right? So in this kind of an environment at a bureaucratic level, do you think, do you see any movement to drive this either with, I think people have handed it off to the pollution control board for whatever it is. I don't think it should even be called a control board. It should just be called a measurement board, if that is what they want to do. How much, who do you think should drive the mandate? And then, of course, you talked about mandates on the industry, which is Ministry of Heavy Industries. Then you have Road Transport and Highways. Then you have Housing and Urban Affairs. Then you have MOEF and CC. Do you see that consultative committees coming together? Do you think something will happen in the near future?
I firmly believe that will happen. I think the only question right now is the timing. Right now, with the elections coming in, so few states already are undergoing election, and then we have an election early next year. I think post-election, I think things will move. But again, it will be a difficult sell because it will definitely impact few people in a negative manner. But the big question is, can we do it without it? Absolutely not. And to me, I think the big transition would be, let's say if I have a bad air quality in my city, whom should I hold responsible? That right now is very unclear. Should I go to Pollution Control Board? Should I go to municipal corporation? Should I go to state government? Should I go to national government? Should I go to farmers in Punjab? or should I go to the big SUV, which may be my neighbor's SUV as well? So that is not very clear. So I think once we have a clear authority who will drive the change, change will happen. And for us, we have to create this enabling framework so that we can get these change agents in place.
Amazing. So let's conclude with the roadmap for, let's not call it Delhi now, since we have enough knowledge to not say it's a Delhi problem. Uh, what do you think are the steps that cities can take? Because this is also an urban problem. Majority of our people are living in urban areas. While the apportionment and the national coordination is happening, cities can do certain things. What do you think are the first two, three things that a city government can do within their remit to push their might forward without giving an excuse that no, this is a large problem, till that happens we will not do anything, right? And what do you think the citizens can do today to start doing something like this?
So one definitely what cities can do is understand the importance of transport, not only in providing the economic linkage, but also understanding the public health. And so that's one. Second, they should start prioritizing in terms of the efficiency based mode of transport. So create sidewalks which are good, which invite people to walk, create infrastructure that encourages people to safely cycle, add more public transport, add more buses, and then create enough charging infrastructure so that whatever vehicle is left is zero emission. So I think if we can start with this approach, I think we will be doing a lot in terms of understanding that the future is zero emission, and walking and cycling are the most beautiful zero emission vehicles that we have right now. Second is, what is it that individuals can do? Absolutely, we can first start respecting pedestrian and cyclists. A lot of times I see people honking when you see cyclist in front. And come on, a cyclist is helping you, in fact, giving space so that you can move in your car. So start respecting people who are walking and cycling. Start respecting people who are using public transport and not see them in any inferior way. And then possible shift away from diesel and then shift away from internal combustion engine vehicles to zero emission vehicles.
Amazing, Amit. I think we have a good roadmap to cleaning up our cities. I just wished we could do it faster and we don't have to continue to breathe clean air. And I think continue to breathe bad air and want to breathe clean air. And like you said, it stuck to me, is that you think economic development should be done first and then clean the air. No, it is, the economic development is not going to happen because, like you gave a practical example, people don't want to live there and do the economy that you want them to do, right? It's not happening, right? You're not going to live in this bad air, getting asthma and all of those things, and still say, oh, the economy is going to grow. It is not going to grow. So I think we are in that unique situation where, like you said, we have to do both of these in parallel: grow the economy and the energy intensity, and yet clean the air. So wonderful having you on the show, Amit. Thanks for coming on the show and talking to us about all of these things. This is a reminder to everybody else to like, subscribe, and share. If you want to see Amit again, let us know. We'll bring him back and talk to him a little more about these topics. Maybe something specific on some other topic next. So see you all next week. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, Satya. Bye bye.